friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Still they placed a star where others just threw a stone. Ignited, 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 yeah.
I'm joined today by the chair and the treasurer of OutWest. So if I could welcome, first of all, Jordan, who is the chair of OutWest, and also then Cathy, who is the treasurer of OutWest. So welcome to LGBTQ Life and welcome to 103.2 Dublin City FM.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael, for having us.
Yeah, if I could, I'll start with yourself, Jordan. You're the chair, and we were talking before we came on air. Your background is from France. Can I ask, without prying at all, how did somebody from La Belle, France, end up in La Belle Mayo?
Well, I have this question coming up very often, so I always answer, it was my heart that brought me here. So yeah, that's and my heart is making me stay. So
Look, the Irish people are very romantic. We love a romantic story. So congratulations on that one. The same question to yourself, Cathy. You come from a place I know quite well, which is just outside Windsor. People don't need to know the town. How did you end up in Mayo, or how did you come to be in Mayo?
Well, I suppose I could say my heart brought me here as well. My husband is originally from Mayo, and always wanted to come home. He was over in England and didn't really enjoy it over there, so we brought the whole family over here a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, dare I say it, since we do not have a football team in the final this weekend, he's probably very excited about the prospects of Mayo, because what I gather, they haven't had a lot of success in recent years. So we wish him the very best on that one, if you could pass that on.
I will. The whole town is, there's a lot of excitement over the match. So it's great. It's a great atmosphere at the moment.
And deserving. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because most people outside of this country wouldn't quite understand about how important these things are to counties. Is that something that you found strange when you came here?
Not really. It's endearing that they're so passionate about their own county and their own home. It's you don't really get that so much in England, you know. It's more rivalry than, you know, passion about your own place. It's or not liking people from elsewhere.
Jordan, you're if we could talk about, for instance, OutWest. Now, just a very small piece of research I've been able to undertake. I gather Southwest, probably next year, it's going to be its 25th anniversary. It was 1997, if I'm correct, it was founded.
yes.
It's one of Ireland's great, well-kept secrets. Why do you think that is? Is it because it was largely focused on the area and the people itself, or generally was it difficult to even interest the mainstream media in OutWest?
Well, that's a good question, actually, because we're still hearing people saying, oh, I've never heard about OutWest, even though we are trying a lot to put the words out with social media. And so I don't know about, maybe it's from the origin, the way it was set up. I don't know, because it was Cathy knows a bit better about the way it was set up. She's been part of OutWest a bit longer than I am, so maybe Cathy, if you.
Cathy, what's your understanding of the history of the organisation?
Well, I suppose it was originally set up to give support to one another. So it was word of mouth. All the meetings and all the social engagements were word of mouth. So, one person would tell their friend and he'd tell 10 other people, and that's how they got the word out. And I suppose there was a lot of fear um, around gathering and about people knowing who you were and what you were. So that was something else. It wasn't very well advertised. I mean, they used to do 4 discos a year, and I think for the most part, they were all word of mouth.
Sure.
Because there was just this constant fear. And I suppose we have to remember that it started shortly after the legalization of homosexuality. So, you know,
Decriminalisation.
yeah, so, sorry,
Yeah.
apologies. Yeah. So, that's something else that, is very important to say. Um, so I suppose for a long, long time, it was these gang of people who knew one another, socialized together, and across the counties knew one another. So it wasn't just sort of in Mayo. And then I suppose the problem started when people started moving away because then you lost that contact. And actually advertising any service is incredibly expensive. And when you're trying to manage on donations and things like that, it's just really, really hard to actually find the money to pay for your advertising. So I suppose that's the reason why we don't get the word out there as easily and as quickly as we'd like to.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm delighted to be able to speak with you today so that we can let a few more people know and perhaps get some more support for you. Jordan, Cathy talked about establishing the organisation in 1997. I'm fairly sure you weren't here in 1997. It was a very different Ireland in 1997, even in Dublin. Um, as Cathy says, we had simply uh, just around that time decriminalised homosexual acts. I suspect in rural Ireland it was even more difficult because it was a very Catholic environment. The stigma that attached to it. Have you spoken to many people about the older people of what their experience was and what their mindset was around that time?
Um, Again, I
Yeah.
guess as you just said, like it was there was a lot of fears of coming out and being, for people being themselves, and even still today, because it's rural Ireland, so it's small towns and everybody knows everybody. So if you if you don't want to be recognize or out with some people, for example in your family, you just want to be out with your friends, it's still very hard to just be yourself, uh, in the open, and because there's always the risk that someone, or so for a young person, for example, someone that knows their parents, and then they see them and then they will tell the parents, and it's that kind of thing. Um so yeah.
Yeah. Well, can I put something to both of you? And I'd be very interested to hear your view on this. It always males tended to stand out because either they lived alone or if they lived together, fingers would always point. From the conversations I've had with people in essence seem to do Queen Victoria. They turned a blind eye to two females living together. Was it slightly easier for two females to live together in rural Ireland? Because it was never technically illegal for two. The acts were never illegal between women. It was specifically illegal for males. Have you spoken to people about that, or what do we know about that?
Well, I actually don't know, to be honest. I didn't have any feedback on that particular
Yeah.
thing, so I don't know about Cathy if she knows.
Yeah. What's your experience there, Cathy? Have you spoken to people, and what have they could perhaps confided in you?
I suppose that they faced the same criticisms and victimization as the guys. Maybe sometimes, as you said, it was probably a little bit more acceptable to see two women going out together, or maybe going to a dance together or a pub
Sure.
together. It was kind of presumed that they were just friends. But certainly today, you find that people will make derogatory comments, about women that they see as lesbian, just the same as they would about guys, which is really, really sad.
It's sad, isn't it?
And I think the women still felt that they couldn't be out, they couldn't be open and frank and transparent about their relationship. That I think this idea that maybe women didn't suffer quite so much is probably, from their perspective, anyone I've spoken to, is not the case, that they suffered in exactly the same way as the guys.
Jordan, can I ask you? You came here from France. When you came here, was the environment similar to what you left in your home country, or was it, shall we say, more restrictive in terms of social awareness and social acceptance?
Um, in in France, I never have, like, I was never scared in some ways, and in Ireland, I've never been scared at all. In France, the difference with Ireland is just, in France we are very, like, it's no good to generalize, but that's my own experience. A lot of judgment. People tend to be very judgmental, so you feel that heavy atmosphere. You constantly feel being judged, whether the way you look, or for who you are. And that's something I don't feel here. I feel that's one of the reasons I really like it here, because there's not that heavy atmosphere, and always seeing people looking at you like weird, or you feel free to dress whatever way you want. That's okay. That would be the big difference now. I would notice. Yeah.
Cathy, I'm going to ask you, you would have been here in 2015 when we had the referendum on marriage equality. And I say to people, that was the day, or that was the event that changed the landscape in this country. It changed the whole social landscape. What was, and I'm presuming you perhaps canvassed out there as well. How did that campaign go down in Mayo? Because a lot of people didn't think it would be very well accepted in the rural parts, but yet it was. There was only one county that rejected the referendum. So how was it accepted in Mayo?
From what I saw around, no, I wasn't actually involved in the canvassing because I was actually very tied up with OutWest.
Sure.
We were organising other things, but I was in contact with the team who were going around, and from what I knew, that for the most part it was very positive, that people were supportive and, were intent on voting positively for that change. I think, though, I I think, yes, it did change the landscape a little bit, but I think there's still an element of, oh, weren't we great? We let you get married amongst the community. And I think it dragged up a lot of issues for the community at the time. So it was great to get the result that we got. And it was great to actually have the referendum, and that's a good thing. But, I think there's a danger that too much would be put on how great it was for the community, when it did drag up a lot of stuff at the time and afterwards. And sometimes the reaction of people to the referendum and what it meant for the community can be slightly, I won't say negative, but slightly, I don't know what the word is.
Are you saying that there's still some of that residual prejudice still there, and it still manifests itself?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's still very much the case here in rural Ireland. There's still that prejudice. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What about yourself, Jordan? One of the elements over the last 2 years that is, I found very disappointing and very shocking is the negativity towards the trans members of the community. And it's quite vicious at times in the city. And I suspect whether it's a whispering campaign, the same issues prevail in the rural areas. Has OutWest, or has even any of your friends experienced that?
Well, yeah. There's a lot of issue with transphobic behaviors. Even myself, I'm not trans, but I'm a non-binary person, and I came out I think a year ago publicly, and it actually opened even more my eyes on what the trans community is actually experiencing. Yeah. Just with the name, I changed my name, and it shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, when you tell someone my name is Jordan, who would feel the need to comment on that? No. But that's actually what happens. And there's as well the pronouns. I think people need more education. There's still so much things that people don't understand. Or they think they understand something that it's not, or even when I was working, a customer asked me, because that person was assuming that I was a woman. And so after a while, I explained to her that no. And she actually felt very comfortable on asking me what I had between my legs. So it's that kind. It's that kind of thing. It's like wow. So, but that's on my own experience. After the trans community, it's I think it's terrible how the discrimination.
Well, can I ask you, because I was at an event, it was a party last weekend, and people who I know who are very familiar with the LGBT community, many of our friends would be part of the LGBT community, and they were being critical of the whole issue around pronouns. Now, you use the pronouns they and them. Is that an area where you think people need to be educated? Because I was surprised that somebody was making such a big deal of this, because as far as I'm concerned, if somebody wants to use he or she or they or them or whatever, that's their own business. Have you experienced much in that regard?
Oh yeah. I do I do a lot, but at the same time, You can see two different type of reaction. Really, you have the people that completely don't understand it and are completely against it without even trying to understand or whatever. They're just stubborn in their own beliefs. Then you have people, I say two, but I would say three categories actually. You have the other people that don't understand at all, but are willing to educate themselves and try it, and you have those that know about it and they really try their best to not make any mistakes on your pronouns and stuff like that. So really that's the three different categories.
Yeah. Cathy, let's move on. OutWest. Tell us about the services that you offer and who they're orientated towards.
Well, the services that we offer, I mean, first of all, we have regional committees. So we're trying to organize social events, either walks, picnics, whatever the community are interested in the 5 counties in Connacht. So that's the first thing. We have our drop-in centre in Mayo, which opened last week. So that is offering a safe space for people to just sit, maybe listen to music, have chat, maybe read a book, maybe play games, whatever they feel most comfortable in. We are hoping to start in the next wee while rapid HIV testing. We've been going through training for that. So we're hoping that's a service we'll be able to offer the community.
Sure.
Our services are offered to all of the LGBTQIA community, and also their family, friends, and allies.
Sure.
So we're happy for anyone to come into the centre or join us on our activities. We're also, once we get up and running, then we want to go back to the sort of things we've done in the past, which is workshops on mental health, sexual health, loneliness, and maybe get some training or workshops going on those sort of subjects, because they're the things that the LGBT community suffer so greatly with in comparison to the wider community. What else are we doing?
Can I ask you, Cathy, these it's very well to offer services, but you need premises to do these things, particularly with, say, something like a drop-in centre. Now, we don't need to talk about the location at this point in time, but how do you manage that? Have you got a fixed premises, or is it in somebody's home, or what's the situation?
No, we're actually really lucky. We opened our fixed premises last week. So we have a building in Castlebar. We had actually started our drop-in centre how long ago is it now, since the pandemic started?
It was since January 2020.
Yeah. And we started, and a couple of storms and the pandemic kind of shut us down. And it was in an office in the Family Resource Centre, just a couple of doors down. And of course, the Family Resource Centre have really struggled to open since. They've struggled even more to try and allow the other groups to enter into the building. So we decided to bite the bullet and find our own premises. So we've worked really hard over the last couple of months getting the place ready. We were lucky there wasn't a great deal of work to do, but we did need to tidy it up and paint it and clean it and get get bits of furniture in and a variety of other bits and pieces. So we actually finally managed to open last Saturday, and we really are so proud of it. We just hope the community will come in and make use of it.
Yeah. Can I ask you, I always say to people, you can't run a revolution without a cash flow. How are you able to fund something like that? Because clearly it's not free, in the sense that bills have to be paid, whether there are lighting, heating, anything like that?
I suppose we got a lump of money from the local council, the Urban and District Community Fund. So that started us off.
Okay,
But
that's
you're
good.
right. You're right. We are going to be, that's probably one of our main concerns is fundraising now that we're open, to keep us open. That's, that fund is going to probably do us until the end of next year. But then we are going to have to find money to cover rent and other expenses. So that's going to be one of our main priorities of the next wee while. There are a lot of funding, grants, etc. We'll be applying for everything that that we can apply for. But we are hoping that people will be gracious and give to one of our fundraisers.
So, can I come back to yourself, Jordan? The pandemic has had a huge effect, not just on the LGBT community across the board, but I suspect it's disproportionately affects the LGBTQ community in rural Ireland. What sort of information have you got to suggest that what the impact has been?
Well, it did isolate a lot of people, and because they couldn't. Some young people, for example, they got stuck in their parents' house, and not every LGBT plus people are okay with their parents, or even they haven't came out yet, and the use of meeting with their friends and be themselves with their friends in school, or maybe outside of schools, or outside the house, their home, it wasn't possible anymore, and the only contact they had was like with internet and Zoom, for example, video chat or the phone. But the problem was as well that if they weren't out with their parents, or if they were out with their parents and the parents didn't like it, or the big struggle with the parents, the problem is if to call even a friend, the risk was the parents would hear them, and also even if something was wrong, for example calling the helpline, the LGBT helpline, it's the same matter. You need a quiet space to be able to call and just speak freely really of what's going on. And I believe as well for the older community, it's the same. Like you had to stay at home, and a lot of older community, they live alone, so it was hard. You don't meet with your friends, you don't. It was a hard time, so it did isolate more people.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you on this one, Jordan, because I gathered that you've put out a call for volunteers. Can you tell us about that? And can you tell us how people might be able to contact you if they were considering volunteering for OutWest?
Yeah, so we are looking at the moment for volunteers for our drop-in center, because obviously we need to have a minimum of people there present to make sure that everything goes well, and nobody is left out, or but it's really just being there, having a presence. Whether the volunteer would like to stay for the 4 hours or just an hour on Saturday, or 2 hours,
Sure.
That's what we are looking for. People willing to give some time.
And can they get information off your website for that?
They can get, we have a section on the drop-in center so it's outwest.ie. They can also send us an email to info@outwest.ie, or they can text or call the info line, which is 087 972 5586. And we also on social media, so Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so they can also send a message via social media.
Cathy, the clock is telling me we're just about out of time, so I'm going to leave the last word with you. I gather you've also got a call out for people to support the organisation financially. If people are listening to this, how can they go about that?
We do have a donation button on our website. So probably the easiest way, if you want to make a donation, is to go onto the website and you can make a donation there. And it really is. It doesn't matter how large or how small. You know, every little helps. And we'd just be so grateful for anything that we can get just to keep us open now that we've actually achieved this.
Yeah, and we might put in as well that if anybody is a bit elderly, perhaps they might remember you in their will and maybe leave a legacy, a small legacy of some variety as well. So if I could make a suggestion to you, I did an interview about 2 weeks ago with the Switchboard, and they're doing a fundraiser. It's basically a table quiz, and it's happening on Zoom. And that's one of the great advantages, because you might have a smaller audience out there, but if you project it against the country, you can join in from anywhere if that's the case. So perhaps that's another way you might be able to do a fundraiser.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Michael. That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
We'll have to get in touch with the Switchboard and see how they're going about it.
Yeah. Last but by no means least, when is your Pride scheduled for next year? Because I gather there's a Castlebar Pride or a Mayo Pride, is there?
There's a Mayo Pride. I'm actually on the committee. We haven't actually set a date in concrete yet, but it's usually around July. So this year it was the 10th. So we're kind of probably aiming for roughly the same time of year, but we haven't actually, it's not written in stone yet.
Yeah.
But definitely there will absolutely be a Mayo Pride next year.
Well, we're looking forward to catching up, because it's been a tough 2 years. So Jordan and Cathy, keep up the great work that you're doing. If there's any way we can ever be useful and be helpful, just simply give us just simply send an email or give me a call, and we'll be very happy to share your message with the rest of the country as well. So Jordan and Cathy, thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks very much, Michael. Thank you.
Friends of Dorothy come out off the sidewalk and onto the street to the sound of those legendary feet. When there's no place like home, anti-am, anti-establishment, with the chaff and the short straw, they'll have a stuff for sure. Anti-am, I'm anti-establishment. They took my name and the clothes I own. They broke our hearts, but not our souls. When there's no place like home, when there's no